What's going on today, Internet? Self-assured retrospect. Today we're going to take a look at the Mobapad N1 HD controller. And this controller has liquid silicone buttons, something I've never come across before. Let's take a look. Before we get going, this controller was provided to me from Mobapad for the purpose of review. They don't get to see this video beforehand. They have no input in what goes out there, and they're not going to see it before you do. Now let's check this thing out. This right here is the Mobapad N1 HD. It is a really nice controller. Pretty much everything that Nintendo probably wishes that the Switch controller was, or is. And maybe the Switch Pro controller will be this, or something similar when the Switch 2 comes out. But let's take a look and see kind of what this thing is all about. First, we're just going to go through the I/O real quick. In the box, you do also get an extra regular D-pad if you like a regular D-pad, which I usually prefer, but I'm trying to get used to this one that's on here right now, which is why it's on there. A couple things I can't do with this D-pad on, and we'll discuss that as we go. You also do get a USB dongle. It is unbranded, and it does have a button on it in order to be able to sync this to a PC. First and foremost, so this is a Switch controller, and I think you're going to learn that as we go through the features. This is also the beautiful box that it comes in, and we're going to get that out of the way right now. I don't know why I called it a beautiful box. It looks like a box. But yes, the temperature is right. It is negative 11 degrees Fahrenheit here right now. Hoofda, and that's before wind chill. All right, here we go. We're going to take a look at this, and like we always do, we are going to start on the top. We do have our bumpers and triggers up here. These are not analog triggers, but they do feel pretty good, and they actually, I think, have less travel than the actual Switch Pro controller, which is really nice for first-person shooters. We also do have a sync button, and then our Type-C port for charging and or hooking this up wired when you want to play it. On the back here, we do have an M1 and M2 button. They're clicky, but they're not real hard to press. I haven't found myself pressing them much on accident, but I can see myself doing it. But so far, they've been pretty good. They do stick up just a little bit, and your fingers do kind of rest on them, so there is not a lot of movement that you need to do in order to hit these. There's obviously nothing on the left or right, and we do not have anything on the bottom yet again. Less and less are we seeing things on the bottom like headphone jacks or charging ports, and I think that's probably a good thing, though I do kind of miss having headphone jacks occasionally. When it comes to the face of the controller here, we do have these liquid silicone buttons. They do have a good travel to them. Let's see if we can take a look at that here. And they bounce back very quick in comparison to some other ones. Now, I don't want to say it's overwhelmingly quick, but they are a little bit bouncier than I would have thought they would have been, and they're nice and quiet. We also do have a button here for setting up our turbo and macro functions, a home button. We do have our camera button that you'd see on any other Nintendo controller, as well as our start and select or plus and minus buttons. Now, we do have this circular D-pad that's on here right now. This can easily be swapped out for a regular D-pad, and we do have one of those here as well. Again, I'm trying to learn how to use this D-pad. It's more or less, I'm trying to figure out if I can do platforming with it, and so far it's been actually kind of enjoyable. I'm not sure why, but I've actually really quite enjoyed it. Now, as far as our sticks go, we do have Hall effect sticks that do click, obviously. They do have a really nice feel to them, and they have about the perfect amount of resistance. So these are a good resistance stick. Unlike a lot of controllers we're seeing right now, they're coming pretty loose. These are not, and they do have an anti-friction ring. You cannot pull the tops of these sticks out. They are actually inside, similar to an Xbox controller, but they do have this anti-friction ring on here, which works well. They don't have the metal anti-friction post, but they appear to have plastic around the post. I'm not positive, but I think there actually is a clear plastic ring around the post. Either that or it's a really good paint job and it's nice and shiny there, but both of them look like they have it. It does feel like that's the case as well with these anti-friction rings. As far as hand feel goes, this is a very good feeling controller in your hands. It does feel a lot like the Switch Pro controller. Your hands rest nicely in it. You don't feel like you're cramped one way or the other. It is a really good centered control. And as I said before, your fingers, I don't even know how to show this to you, your fingers do rest directly on these back buttons. I would probably prefer them a little bit tighter than they are, but they're not too bad. And they do have a light click to them, as I stated before. I did just do a software update on this controller, which did enhance rumble as well as added X input mode when you're using the USB dongle, which is really nice. You don't have to go through and monkey around with it. Now there's just a combination, I believe it's home and X to get that X input mode. So that is really nice to have on here. I'm not sure why that wasn't on there to begin with. I might have just been an oversight when they were releasing this, but it is a good feature to have. Now we're gonna go into a little bit of testing on this. We're gonna start off here with the gamepad tester. We're going to go through all the keys and everything, make sure everything is registering it, which it is as we go through here. And then we're going to check and see what the error rate is on these Hall effect joysticks. They end up about between a 0.3 and 0.4%, and that's after running this multiple times. More average to 0.4, so that's what we're showing you here. Ran it again, another 0.4, so just to double down, I did run it about 5 times, but here's 2 of them. Now we're going to run into pull testing, just check the polarity. I started off with the right stick and then went into the left. You're going to see some pretty good results here. We're getting 99% on both of these sticks, just a little bit better than 99%. Stability is really good, a low instability rate. Not too bad. It's pretty common for Hall effect sticks to get good stability on a polarity test, but this is just showing that it's actually still right there. I did run that test multiple times as well, and the results continued to be the same. Lastly, I just picked like a random tournament map over on Aim Labs just to check it out and see exactly how well it was doing. This is kind of to the user more than it is necessarily to the controller. It takes a while to adjust to a new controller. This is the first or second time I actually tried it here, so this is my second run on this. And the first one was about 66%. I think this one ended up being about 75% accuracy over this 2-minute course, so not too bad. I think with a little bit more practice, I would have done a little bit better. I know that my aim with this did continue to get better as I used the controller here in testing after I was completed with this. So I think that if we went back and did this again, we would see even better results. Before we get into gameplay, I'd like to go over a couple of things that kind of stand out to me on the Mobapad N1 HD over the traditional Nintendo Switch Pro controller, and why I think this kind of gives it a run for its money. We can start off with the addition of the Dish D-pad, which the D-pad on the Nintendo Pro controller is pretty solid. It's kind of hard to complain about it. It's actually one of the better, stockish controllers that you can get out there as far as the D-pad goes. I'm a big fan of it. It does have a good middle dish to it as far as the D-pad goes, but here we have a full dish that we can actually add, and then obviously that ability to swap it out with a regular D-pad. So I think that's a huge thing. It's really easy to swap, so depending on what kind of game you're playing, you definitely might want to do that. I have found when I'm playing games where I'm using this as a select button, changing guns or changing views, I am more of a fan of using a traditional D-pad, but I am really trying to use this for some platformers and stuff and see if I can't get used to it. It's a process, but it seems to be getting better as I go, which is a big testament to this controller because those games I struggle with sometimes to begin with, so I'm doing pretty well on here. Now, these liquid silicone buttons, I don't even really know what that means. What I think that this means, without tearing this controller apart, I believe that there's actually liquid in the membrane itself, so instead of using a conductive pad that can get worn out over time, which I think this probably could too, instead of using that pad, you actually have a pocket of liquid in there that's making that conduction work. I'm not positive, but I think that's what it is. But either way, they seem a lot springier. It's gonna be hard to show in a video like this. So here's your Pro Switch controller, and it does have a pretty quick bounce back, but this one is, for one, a smaller and not so tall of a button, but it actually comes back really well. And it just feels smoother, I guess. Where the buttons on the Pro controller actually kind of feel wobbly because they are so tall, and they do kind of actually move a little bit, and you're just not going to see that on here. The engineering seems to be better on here where they're not moving. Now, this Pro controller gets a lot of use because my son typically uses it. As much as I'd like him to use a different controller, he uses my Pro controller almost every day, and so this thing has been beaten. It's got decent battery life, which is a good thing for him because he always forgets to charge it, which is why I'm letting him use it. This also gets good battery life, and obviously it hasn't been beaten as much or worn in, but this feels a lot better. The sticks themselves feel a lot better. These are a full range Hall effect joystick. Definitely feels better. These feel really loose in comparison. Obviously, we know that Nintendo doesn't use Hall effect and their joysticks go bad pretty frequently. We're not going to see those same problems here. These joysticks should last a lot longer. So on top of the liquid silicone button that should last for over 5 million clicks, we also have the Hall effect sticks that should last much, much longer. So longevity wise, again, best bang for your buck, you're going to come out ahead of a Nintendo Switch Pro controller. I have found though that I struggle with fighting games on here using this particular D-pad. Even the regular D-pad is kind of a struggle. For some reason, even though it seems to assist in the diagonals, no matter which pad you use on here, it doesn't seem to cut everything. When I'm playing like a Street Fighter game or one along those lines, it seems to struggle a little bit with that, though it does okay with Smash Brothers. So I guess it just kind of depends on what kind of fighting game you want to play. Now, when it comes to the Pro controller, these are pretty loose as far as your triggers go, but it is a pretty short throw. I'd argue this one's actually shorter, or at least it feels shorter because of the way it stops when it's going. These have digital bumpers and triggers, and they do have a stiffer membrane inside of them. So that stiffer membrane is definitely helpful. With those M1 and M2 buttons on the back, you don't have that on your traditional Pro controller, but this does have what is kind of an exclusive feature of the Pro controller for the most part. This does have HD rumble, but it is kind of hard to tell even on a Pro controller, and this as well. Sometimes it's hard to differentiate HD rumble versus regular rumble. It's hard to tell exactly because HD rumble is not very accurate. It's something Nintendo might be abandoning here in the next system, to be honest with you. Nobody's talked a lot about it, but it seems like something they may abandon because it's not used much, and when it is used, it's not very accurate. The other thing that the N1 has is if you touch an Amobi to the center part, which I don't have any of my Mobis on me right now, otherwise I'd show you. I actually could use, I've got a Mobi spoofer. I don't really want to do that in the video for reasons. It does work. I tested it. And I don't, just because I don't have my Mobis with me, I would, otherwise I'd show you. But if you touch an Amobi to it, it does actually register that Amobi to your Nintendo games when you're playing. You're just gonna have to take my word for it, or go watch somebody else's video who might have an Amobi. Now we can get rid of this Pro Controller because none of these other features are really gonna pertain to it. But like I said, we do have our turbo functions as well, and our macros. And the macros on here also record timing. So if you set a macro and it's like YY, wait like 2 seconds, XBA, it will actually play it exactly how you played it with that timing recorded. Programming turbo on here is pretty simple. You just use your action button right here, the little gear guy, and you hit the function button that you'd like to do. So like I said, if you wanted your Y to be turbo, you'd hit this, hit Y, and you're done. Now if you want to do another quick tap, that'll actually make that an auto turbo button. So instead of just doing it when you're holding the button down, you just have to tap it and it'll continue to go on until you tap it again and it will quit. Really nice feature to have if you're playing a game. Like I tested this with Uncharted. There's a lot of spots in there where you have to like mash down X or Y in order to open a door or whatever because you're banging on it, or to knock or whatever. Just hitting the turbo and that button, it rocks, and you don't have to do anything else. So I don't have to sit there and mash the buttons, which is absolutely fantastic. All you have to do to switch turbo modes is hit this gear icon and then use the left stick up or down, and that will switch into the different turbo modes you have going on. And this is similar to how switching the rumble features works as well. If you want to go up or down and not use the application that I was using earlier to do the firmware update on here, all you do is hold down this gear icon and go up and down with the left stick, and that'll increase and decrease rumble up or down. And it can rumble. This one actually gets pretty intense when it comes to rumble, and part of that is having that HD rumble feature in there. If you really want to experience the HD rumble, you're really going to want to crank this thing up. And lastly, another thing that does compare to the Switch controller, which I almost forgot to mention, is this does have 6-axis gyro. I'm not a gyro player myself. I don't know, I didn't grow up playing with it. I'd like to learn how to use it because, especially in first-person shooting games, it definitely makes life a lot easier. It's something that I'm not good at, so I have a hard time telling you if it's good or bad because I'm just not good with it. It's something that I'd like to learn. Again, maybe I'll learn with this controller because I intend to continue to use this controller here after my testing is complete. It does seem to be a little bit touchier than the Switch Pro controller, and I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but we will find out as I continue to try to use it. Now to sync this up with a Nintendo Switch, it's pretty simple. You just have to go into your grip order like you would with any other controller. You just hold this radio button here on the top. It actually talks to you. It makes noise. I don't know if you can hear that, but the controller itself actually makes noise, and look at that, we're already paired up and ready to rock and roll. So I want to use Fortnite just to kind of show what it can do in this kind of environment where you're going to need to be able to shoot fast and also hit angles. And it does really well with that. And it's a game that I don't play very often anymore, so I'm not real familiar with the layout or anything like that. And I really don't remember how to play, even though I play with my son every once in a while. I'm definitely not as good as he is these days. And I used to be way better than him, but I just don't play the game anymore. But it is a good game to test out a controller if you're trying to figure out how it's going to work with a first-person shooter. It's kind of unique in the fact that it's kind of all over the board. As far as the different angles you're going to need to be able to shoot at and your accuracy at different distances, it's going to be important for a controller to be accurate at those further distances because you are really just pinholing people when they're more than about 50 yards away from you in video game land anyways. Now, as I play the game more, I may want to go into this app here, and all you have to do is hit the thing here, and you can actually sync it directly up with it, and you can change the settings on your controller. If I find myself that I need to change how my sticks are zeroed in or anything like that, playing some of these shooting games especially, I can just go in here and I can configure my controller right here from the app. And you can set up default configurations for different games, and I think you can load them in here too, but I'm not positive. But if I wanted to edit my current configuration, I'd be able to see where my curves and things are. So for a game like Fortnite, I would be able to go in here and make those changes that I needed to. You can also preset your turbo buttons and things in here too for your different layouts, which is kind of cool. And then you can remap buttons. So this is the one way you can remap buttons. So one thing that's nice about this is you don't have to use the app in order to set turbos and macros, but it is a little bit easier, as always, to use the app, right? And then you can see you can change your vibration settings on both sides as well, where when you do it from the controller itself, you could only do it all together. So this kind of gives you a little bit more ability, but you don't have to use the app if you don't want to. the first thing and reason why I actually downloaded the app to begin with was to do a firmware upgrade, because I was pretty sure that there was firmware for this. I've had this for a bit now. I've been playing with it, and I hadn't got this video out as quickly as I wanted to because of my vacation. And I thought that I saw somewhere that there was an update done right after this released, and there was. So if you get this, there likely will be a firmware update available for you as well. All in, I think the Mobapad N1 HD is a fantastic little controller. It does very well for what it's supposed to do. I think it does a little bit more than the Pro Controller from Nintendo itself. Well, I know it does more. I actually like this more. The Pro Controller from Nintendo has been one of my go-to controllers for a long time, which is why I had a hard time giving it to my son to use. And for the last couple of weeks, this has been my go-to Nintendo Switch controller, and I've been completely happy with it. I don't have any problems using this as my Nintendo Switch controller on a daily. I did test it with PC and Android, obviously PC, as you saw when I was doing the testing, and then I also did test it on an Android tablet. I do have a Snapdragon Android tablet that I've got a review someday I will do on, and it worked really well on that tablet as well. So this is a very versatile controller that's working. You do have your X inputs as well, so anything on that gaming end you want to use. For some reason, Windows doesn't recognize it as an Xbox controller with X input, but if I Bluetooth it into Windows, then it recognizes it as an Xbox controller. So a little confusing, but you can still get that profile if you want it to be pre-built in. Otherwise, you just have to go in and change it yourself. And I'm still not sure what liquid silicone is, but I hope it is what I think it is, and if it's not, well, maybe somebody can leave me down in the comments and let me know exactly what it is. I tried to look it up, but I found a lot of conflicting answers, so I don't know who to believe or what to believe. So if you leave a comment, I may not believe you, but I will agree with you probably, because I honestly don't know. If you are interested in the Mobapad N1 HD controller, I will leave links down in my thingamabob so you can pick one up for yourself. It also helps support the channel. And if you're looking for more of a Joy-Con type controller, I'm actually testing out these two controllers here for Mobapad right now. I just received these the other day. We have the Mobapad S1 and the Mobapad S1 HD. I'm assuming that means this has HD rumble and this has regular rumble. Haven't got that far into it. I am using the SHD on my Switch right now when I'm not using a detached controller, and so far I'm quite enjoying it. These also have liquid silicone buttons in them. A lot of the same features you're going to see here, you're going to see in these, but we'll get to that in a different video. Again, links will all be down in my thingamabob if you want to check any of these out. But that's all I got for you today. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, share this video with your friends because sharing helps grow the channel. Also, let me know, do you like it when I do controller reviews? I know they're not my most viewed videos, but I kind of enjoy them. It's kind of outside of my comfort zone, so they tend to not be as fluent, but I'm learning a lot. So I like doing them, but if you guys don't like it, let me know. But I do have a few more controllers that I am testing out right now. And again, I really do enjoy the testing side of it, so it does give me something a little different than doing handhelds all the time. But let me know that down in the comments section as well. And then you can go watch one of these videos that's up on top that YouTube is recommending for you. That's all I got for you today. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.